Welcome to the Rockin Rich Lynch on the Radio Show. I'm your host, Rockin Rich Lynch, inviting you to join me as we discover great new music by bands and artists from around the world. With interviews, music news and reviews, great prizes, and a whole lot more. Visit us online today at soundpress.net for great music promotion and publicity. Hi, this is Rockin Rich Lynch, and you're listening to the very best of Rockin Rich Lynch on the radio. We recently moved our operations from the New York, New Jersey market to Nashville, Tennessee, and we are now looking for a production and broadcast partner in the region to take the radio show to new heights. If you're a band, musician, solo act, or represent a musical project in any genre, please visit soundpress.net and our new site, musiccitynashville.net, to learn how we can help get your message to the world. Now, please enjoy this great interview from our archives. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the show today, arguably the hottest and sexiest of the original 5 MTV VJs, and I'm not talking about Alan Hunter. But disc jockey, musical journalist, actress, and model, the sultry Nina Blackwood. Nina, welcome to the program.
Hello, Rockin Rich Lynch.
It's so good to have you on the program, Nina. I was 15 years old going into my sophomore year in high school when MTV launched to the world.
Oh, boy. Wow.
And, you know, you kept me company basically for the next, until I graduated high school. And basically I continued watching MTV pretty much solidly for the next 10 years.
Wow. That's cool.
Well, it was a bit of a waste of time too. However, for me, it was research because I ended up talking to so many of the people that, I really did. I spent a lot of time watching MTV. I could have been doing other things, but it was a great education in a lot of ways, and it was something brand new and novel at the time. I mean, how revolutionary was that channel?
Well, to look at it now, it's hard to even envision that it was, but, back 30 years ago, it was very cutting edge. It was very innovative. Cable was in its infancy, so even, there weren't a lot of cable channels, so that in itself was innovative. And then you have, 24 hours, 7 days a week of music videos. I mean, wow! It was a radio station on television. It was quite amazing.
It was a dream come true. I mean, before that, you had dribs and drabs of videos, maybe late night programs every now and then, but a whole channel, right, 24/7 was just unbelievable.
Right, and like you're saying, even without the videos, I mean, if you wanted to see your favorite band, you either had to go and see them in concert, and there were, a few shows, Midnight Special, Ron Kirshner's rock concert, where you could see them on television, but the fact that you could see everything was just phenomenal. I mean, wow, and it was hypnotic. I mean, people would get hooked waiting for their favorite artist, and you'd sit through, and the next thing you know, it's like a half hour later, you're waiting for, whoever, Duran Duran,
Yeah, well, it definitely took a couple of years for the whole thing to evolve and catch on, because in the early days, you played a lot of videos, there was a lot of repeats, but we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the interview. I'd like to know, can you tell me a little bit about how you landed the position as one of the first 5 VJs on MTV?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll just cut to the chase. But, I'm a musician. I've played music since I was 4. So I've always been involved with music. And then also I've always done performing. I started acting when I was 8. So those two things have always been in my life. And as I said, I'm cutting out, several years. But bottom line, I had moved out to Los Angeles, and I was playing my harp, as a day gig, although it was at night, studying Strasberg, just making studying at Strasberg, and just making inways with the acting career and the music career. And I was also working on 3 different projects that pertained to video music. One in particular, which was called K-Punk. I was functioning as a video jockey host, although it didn't have a name yet. playing videos, doing interviews, man on the street type of thing with a fellow by the name of Michael Seenhart, who was very far-reaching. He was, talk about being on the cutting edge. I mean, this guy had video equipment, everything, way back in like 1979 we're talking about. And MTV didn't even go on the air until 81. So I was working in that direction anyway, and I always read Billboard magazine, and I saw an article about a 24-hour video music channel that was looking for hostesses that should know about the music and music business. And I go, that's what I'm doing. Send in the 8x10, the resume, whole thing. They came out to L.A. 2 different times to do auditions, and over a period of about 6 months. And then come June, called me up and they said, we want to hire you. You have to move to New York if you want the job. And that's what I did.
Excellent, and the rest is history. You guys were so influential. It really was like, you had, when it was, one of the 5, it was always like, there's a friend. It was always, for me, I always preferred to see you, Martha, you two were sort of like, opposite poles of each other, because, Martha was cute and cuddly, and you were kind of like the unattainable in a way. But it was also good to hang out with Mark Goodman too.
Yeah, well, I think the cool thing, I mean, if I could say this about the 5 of us, the 5 original ones of us, we were never trying to be like, these TV stars or anything. We basically, we always felt like just, regular people, but that had a cool job. Whereas some of the people that came later, I think they went on there thinking that they were God's gift to humanity, and they were like the celebs and TV stars. And and to this day, we're still that way. It was like, 5 people that love music, enjoyed the videos, but our job was cool, and I think that came across, and I still hear this, like what you're saying to this day, from people that grew up with us. And that is like the nicest thing, that people felt close to us, not looking at us like some, manufactured TV celebrity, thing,
Right. Well, you guys like, I was really into like Hit Parade or Circus, Cream magazine. So you guys kind of made all that, jump off the pages. All that came alive, with real hosts and real videos and, it seemed, prior to the internet, it was like the first access that we really had to the artists that we looked up to and idolized.
Yeah, well, and I grew up reading those magazines that you're talking about. That's why I was reading Billboard that day. So you're absolutely right about that. It was an extension. It was all that kind of stuff, but in one place, the music news, the interviews, and then on top of that, you get all these videos. So it was that. It was just a great experience, and it really was,
Let me back up a little bit. We're talking to Nina Blackwood, one of the original 5 VJs on MTV Music Television. MTV launched in August of 1981. We were supposed to have Nina on the program back in August of 2011 to celebrate the 30th anniversary, but we're still in the 30th year. Nina, I had a little trouble with the hurricane that knocked me off the air for a couple of days.
I know.
So it bumped us back about 6 months, but it's really good to have you on the show today. Were you surprised that MTV neglected to acknowledge the 30th anniversary?
No. And actually, quite personally, I was glad that they did, because I don't really feel at all connected to how MTV is these days with all that reality stuff in the Jersey Shore and whatever. I'm not big on reality TV anyway, no matter what channel it's on. But, I mean, they literally dropped the M of music television. So I was really hoping that they wouldn't do anything, because I didn't want to participate in it. So I'm not surprised. And also, they are really funny, because they don't like, they're like, eternal adolescents. They actually, and this is the truth, I'm not making this up, they actually do not like to admit that they're 30 years old, because that, to a kid, their target audience, 30 years old, is like you might as well, be in a rocking chair with crutches, or a cane, So I'm not surprised that they didn't, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't, actually. We did a whole thing. I don't know if you know this or your listeners know this, but Mark, Martha, and Alan and I, of course, dear JJ, he would have been with us, but, he passed away several years ago. But we're all working together on Sirius XM, the big 80s on 8 channel. So we did a whole special through Sirius, which made much more sense. It really did.
Right. Well, you've kind of gone to the other medium now behind the mic, and in the three mediums that you've participated in front of the television camera, behind the mic as a radio host and a writer, do you prefer one discipline over the other?
Radio by far. I love radio, and actually I loved radio way, way back. Having grown up in Cleveland, Ohio, I grew up listening to, was the number one channel for a station, I should say, number one radio station in the country for decades, WMMS. So I actually really wanted to do radio back then, but my manager, I got a manager very early on who remains my manager to this day, and he kept saying, radio is, it's so unsteady, you really should go in, this other field, and he really was pointing me in the direction, of on-camera stuff, more so than radio. He said, it's a very unstable career and blah, blah, blah. But I never lost the desire for it. So I love radio, and I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I had the best time, and I would never trade the years at MTV and then, later going on to Entertainment Tonight, Solid Gold, and all that. I would never trade those years. But I really, really enjoy the magic of radio, and so I would have to say at this point, radio. long answer. I do like writing as well, though I did enjoy that, but radio really is my passion.
Excellent, Nina. NinaBlackwood.net, by the way, is the website, everybody. You can go on over there and see what Nina has going on. There is some news posted on the site, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes. But Nina, I wanted to ask you, I've seen it posted where you've mentioned that Live Aid was probably the most significant day in the history of the channel MTV. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Live Aid and that particular day. And also, do you think there was any other significant events that might have added to MTV's legacy besides Live Aid?
Well, I think Live Aid, not just for the channel, but it was so significant globally for the music world, and then also, for humanitarian reasons. So I think it was significant all the way around, and it's hard to top that as far as significance. But, for personal significance, I used to really enjoy we do our New Year's Eve concerts, and they were live. They were really live, not pretending to be live. And so you'd celebrate all the 5 time zones every hour with these great bands, get dressed up, and here you are, New York. You can't beat New York for New Year's Eve, and we were generally at a venue very near Times Square, and it was just electric. So we had a lot of fun, and I do love live television and that and the celebration of New Year's Eve and being with my fellow VJs, who we do love each other. We still are like family. It was great, that's hard to top.
Hey, Nina, I remember that I spent many a New Year's Eve with MTV, so I definitely remember those.
They were so much fun, and the fact that they were really live, you never knew what was going to happen. The first year, you mentioned Alan earlier. I mean, poor Alan and I, we got stuck. There was some technical difficulty with setting one of the bands up, and we were on, just the two of us, for 15 minutes. And you know, you do on the radio, you try and talk for 15 minutes about something that really makes sense, and we kept getting the stretch signal from the floor producer, and it's like, oh my God, we were ending up, I was talking about my cats. We're both sweating, going like, God, what did they That's live TV.
Yeah, nowadays they just fill it in with like Twitter comments and Facebook feeds.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, and actually what was very funny about that, Alan always brings this up, our floor producer actually had like little cards, little index cards with, bits of trivia and stuff for the purpose in case there was a technical difficulty. And he was completely not even paying attention to us. He's talking to somebody else, with these cards in his hand. Now, that we're, seasoned performers, so to speak, say, hey, Brian, give us the cards. But then, it's like our first New Year's Eve. We're still, babes in the woods, we're just going. And he had the cards that we could have used. But no, he just was, God knows what he was talking about, but he wasn't paying attention to us.
Hey, Nina, do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to talk to you about some of the acts that I've interviewed on my program that basically that were born out of my love of MTV, that I wanted to get on the show because I was initially introduced to them via MTV. So you're probably well familiar with them as I am.
Okay.
NinaBlackwood.net is the website, everybody. Nina Blackwood, one of the original 5 VJs on MTV Music Television that basically, was there with me from about 15 to 25. I was a pretty sheltered kid. But I'm branching out now. So let me start off with, first and foremost, Jeff Downs of Asia and the Buggles was on my program.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, with the Buggles, the first video ever played on MTV.
Right. Video Killed the Radio Star, which was actually written in 79. So, a lot of people think that it was written for MTV and it was specifically about MTV, but it wasn't. It was something that was out in the UK a couple of years, not several, a couple of years before MTV was actually launched.
And then
I still get butterflies in my stomach when I hear that song.
Oh yeah, it is such a beautiful, the piano riff. There's really nice melody in that track. It's really nice.
It's a great song, and but just a tee 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 tee. I mean, even doing that right now, it makes me a butterflies. It's just because it changed our lives. I mean, that's huge.
And then of course Jeff was recruited into Asia, which was probably the first big supergroup that MTV wrapped themselves around.
Yep.
Back in the day. All right, 2 other guys that I had on recently, both had a couple of hits in the 80s, and both of them now are radio hosts in their own particular markets.
Let me guess.
Okay.
Greg Kinn?
He's one.
And Dee Snider?
No, but he's from your hometown.
He's from Cleveland?
Yep. And he was the 47th video ever played on MTV.
Oh God, I don't know that one.
Michael Stanley.
And he's a radio host.
Michael Stanley of the Michael Stanley Band.
Oh, of course, Michael Stanley. Oh, I didn't know he was doing radio.
Apparently, he's had a drive time slot for over a decade, I believe.
Oh, I know he was doing TV for a long time. Well, Michael Stanley, that's a very funny story, because Michael Stanley was actually in my high school sweetheart's older brother's band when I was growing up. The Tree Stumps was the name of the band. And his mom, Michael and I are both, well, I'm not from there originally, but we both went to the same high school, not at the same time. He's older than I am, but his mother was a substitute teacher at the high school, and his younger sister was, she was a year below me, I believe. So I've known Michael, since before I could drive. And I love Michael Stanley. In fact, one of my favorite songs in the entire world that I just love is Rosewood Bitters. Do you know that song?
I do. I became more familiar with it recently when we had him on the air. Very great tune.
Oh, and Joe Walsh actually is somebody that I knew when I was a little kid with the James Gang. And Joe, on his Confessor album, does a great version of Rosewood Bitters. But I don't know, speaking of the James Gang and stuff, did you know that they were just recording in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago?
No, but they did get together and tour a few years back, didn't they?
No, this was recent, more recent than that, with Michael Stanley.
Oh, I didn't know that at all. That's cool.
Yeah. Actually, it was. This is so funny how I found out. Good old Facebook, but my high school sweetheart's younger sister, Carmela, put a photo of them up on Facebook, and I go, oh my God, there they are, and there was Michael, and Michael's very cool, and he's got a great voice, and it's kind of interesting with that band because they were regionally very big and had one video, like you said, it was the 47th. I did not know that, but they never broke out. Across the country. And I don't understand that because they were a real good band. But, boy, to this day, Michael Stanley Band can sell out in the Midwest.
And a nice solo on that song from Clarence Clemens. And the sax playing on that. And that's another thing is Springsteen's coming to Cleveland later in the month. And I would love to see Springsteen invite Michael Stanley up on stage because it's something he's never done. I mean, he'll invite a lot of regional guys from the areas when he's playing up on the stage. But Michael Stanley, actually, Nina, he's got a new album out. I don't know if you're playing it or not. It's called The Hang. It's fantastic. It came out just a couple of months back. But he's had a tough...
No, I didn't know. See, we're we're trading info. No.
Yeah,
no, I didn't know that. I'll have to check it out.
He's had a tough year. It's his 25th album to his name, but 18 months ago, his mother died, followed quickly by the...
She died?
Yep, and then it was followed quickly by the passing of his father, and then he said about 8 months later, his wife died very, very quickly and unexpectedly. So the album is just
Michael's wife died?
Yep. He had a very tough year, Nina. So.
Oh no! Yeah, his mom was Michael's real last name is Gee, Michael Stanley Gee.
Right.
And Mrs. Gee is was the substitute teacher. Oh God, I should try and get a hold of him.
I
really should. It'd be nice to be back in touch with him anyway. But oh God,
give him a spin because
I'm so sorry. His wife died.
Right.
Oh my God.
Nina, give The Hang a spin because it's such a fantastic album. It's just so rich and it's just so full, and you can tell it was really born out of the actual. This guy had a lot of real hardship in the last 18 months. That's why I'd love to see him, because like you said, he didn't really rise to the level of superstardom. I actually asked about him. He was in the last interview I just did, and he said that was kind of his fault because he didn't get the extension from Epic that he should have, and that sort of kind of stalled out the whole Michael Stanley Band, like around 1987.
That's too bad. Yeah, because he's and he's great on stage. I mean, he just has a very and I gotta say, and people make fun of Cleveland, but I'm very proud of Cleveland. I love the fact I grew up there. I'm very proud of that fact. And he's got that nice, earthy, soulful, honest vibe going. I can't say enough about him and his music. It's very Ohio. Which should translate to the rest of the country. That's the thing that I never understood.
Right.
That explains it, what you just said.
It
always has to do with management of record companies.
Plus, I mean, really, in the reality of things, there's really only room for so many. I mean, from my point of view, like singer-songwriters that emerged from the time and around the channel, you got John Mellencamp, you got Bruce Springsteen, you got Tom Petty, maybe a few others, but there's not a lot of room for, the male archetype singer-songwriter. You can't, not everybody can rise to that level.
Yeah, and Mellencamp, I mean, my goodness. I mean, he has done so well and just, still going and the things even lately that he's done with, Dylan and the Americana stuff. I mean, his career has been great. I'm very proud of him because I did his first interview at MTV, so consequently it was one of his first ever interviews when he was still John Cougar, for crying out loud. And he was as he calls himself, a little bastard, and he kind of was. His mouth just didn't stop talking. I always liked him, though, because he was such a John. He's John. And so I particularly have been really, really proud of the longevity and the credibility of his career. I think it's just great. I think it's wonderful.
Hey, Nina, I got about a dozen more people on the list, but I'm going to save a lot of them probably because we're going to have you on the show again sometime.
Okay.
But let's talk about the diversity of the 80s. I mean, could it have been probably the most unique musical decade that we've known?
I actually, I think so, and I'm not really being prejudiced towards it because I actually really like the music in the 60s. I love the British invasion and then the later 60s with all the other stuff. That was kind of my formation with WMMS, like I was talking about earlier. So I actually really did love the music of the mid to late 60s. But I would say as far as diversity, and that can directly be credited to MTV because MTV played pretty much all of it across the board. I mean, you could hear Def Leppard, and then the next thing you'd hear a Michael Jackson song, and then you'd hear like Animotion, and then maybe you'd hear like Depeche Mode. So there was a great variety for everybody's taste. And Madonna, of course, you had the pop, you had the rock, you had the hair bands, you had the new wave, the more goth, the alternative stuff, classic alternative, all across the board. A smorgasbord, so to speak.
Well, now here we are in 2012. You already said that you don't care for reality TV too much, but would you say what would you say is the more logical inheritor of the platform and power of MTV? Would you say that would go to American Idol, or would that go to more the internet and the technological advances that have happened?
I would have to say the internet. Yeah. Yeah, the internet has really taken over the music, basically. I mean, everybody, and especially a certain generation, younger generation, I mean, that's where they go. They don't go to television. They don't go to MTV to see music. They go on the internet. They go on the internet to buy music. Everything's the internet.
Yeah, that's...
I was reading something Slash said, which, does kind of make us sound like the older generation, but I gotta admit, the magic has been lost to a certain degree. And this is what he said, and I had thought this before I read this recently. But you used to be able to get an album cover, even a CD cover, and sit there and you're staring at the liner notes, you're looking at the artwork, you're reading it. I mean, at least I did. You're just eating everything up while you're listening to the music, and it was such an overall experience. And now you go on iTunes and you just basically get the song. So I think there's a level of the music listening experience that has been lost.
Right. Plus, people are just fast forwarding through their iPods. They're not even giving songs, 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's just, it's a different world. And like I said, in a way, it makes us, even when I read what Slash said, I go, God, it does make him sound like a classic rocker. But the fact is, I totally agree with it. And the younger generation, they could go, oh, yeah, because they never experienced it, but they would probably really dig it. If they did, they go, wow, that's pretty cool. But that's not the mentality anymore.
NinaBlackwood.net is the website. Nina Blackwood was one of the original 5 VJs for MTV. And Nina, you just signed a deal with Atria Books for a tell-all on MTV. When do you think we'll see that hit the bookshelves?
Well, probably next year. And I just actually got an email yesterday from Gavin Edwards, who's putting everything together, our writer, who I love Gavin. Gavin is great. And he said he's halfway through it right now. So, yeah, should be next year. I would think not. I don't think it'll be out in 2012. I doubt it, but the fact that he's already halfway through, I was quite impressed. So that's kind of cool. That's, the story of, the early days of MTV is experienced through us. I'm looking forward to reading it.
That's cool.
You know what's really funny is that the 4 of us are finding out stuff about each other and stories and experiences that we had that even though we were together, we didn't even know about the other ones. So it's been enlightening for us as well.
That's cool. The mysteries are still unfolding.
Yeah, they are. It's funny. Anytime we get together, something will come up and we go, I didn't know that. Really? Yeah, I didn't know that. It's funny. And we were close, so it is kind of, it's fun. And I love those guys. They're, Alan and Mark are my brother, and Martha, my little sister.
Hey, Nina, I've been at this for 10 years here underground on the internet, podcasting, talking to some amazing people like yourself, and I can't even believe it, but I would love to join you over there at SiriusXM one day. That's a dream of mine, but we'll see. I'm trying to make it happen. I don't know if it will, but I am working on that. 2012 is here. Are there any things in the world of music that you're particularly looking forward to as the year unfolds?
Oh, that I'm looking forward to? Well, what I'm looking forward to next year, the Stones, hopefully they will tour for their 50th, which is actually this year, but I'm a huge Stones fan, so kind of looking forward to that.
Roll out the steel wheels one more time.
Yeah. Oh, I love Keith. Keith's my man. He's my main man. I like him a lot, and I just think the Stones are fantastic, so I guess that would be. And I was really happy about Van Halen getting back together with David Lee Roth. And I actually didn't mind Sammy. I like Sammy as a person, as a singer anyway. And I did like the years with Van Hagar,
Exactly.
So it was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. But I gotta say, Van Halen is not Van Halen except for when Dave's in the band. It's just... So I kind of had this past few months, I've had Van Halen fever. I really have, going back to some of their old stuff and going, man, Eddie is so mad. He's just so bad,
Well, Eddie's
just great.
They were able to, put a positive spin on, all the years of question marks about the Dave years and everything. So at least they were able to get that ship going in the right direction one more time.
I think it's great. And Eddie, he's had so many things. You were talking about Michael having a hard year. Well, some of it, of course, Eddie brought on himself with the alcoholism, but it is a disease. And it's a hard thing to fight. And to the degree that he has it, very hard. Fought that, had cancer. I mean, he's gone through a lot, and he's looking and sounding better than ever, and that really makes me happy because he was headed to be another one of our tragedies, big time. I mean, there's only so long you can go drinking the way he was drinking without killing yourself.
Right.
Dying from it. So, and what a loss that would have been. I mean, there's nobody like Eddie. I mean, Eddie's a phenomenal musician.
Hey, man, humanity is resilient. So many people are, just facing the abyss, and they bounce back incredibly. And it's great that Eddie Van Halen's been another one of those. And Nina, I'm so glad that we were able to get this together after 6 months overdue. But it was great talking to you, and I'd love to have you back on the show again some other time to continue going over that list.
I would love it too, and thank you. I can't believe when I got your email, I go, I can't believe he remembered, and I didn't bug you because I knew that you were going through, a certain amount of stuff with that storm. So, I had kind of forgotten about it all these months, so it was like, oh my goodness, he remembered.
No, well, you were on the list. We just had to get this thing going back, and like I said, we're up and running again, Nina. I'm not stopping ever again.
Yay! You got a little underground Quonset hut, right?
Exactly. We're getting ready.
A bomb shelter.
Getting ready for 2012.
Yeah.
All right, Nina, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Rockin' Rich Lynch on the Radio Show, part of the SoundPress.net radio network. Remember, if you're a band or artist looking for promotion, or if you'd like to sponsor this show or add this program to your station, please get in touch with us today at SoundPress.net.